A warm round of applause. We need headphones for Mr. Timmermans.
There you go. Yes? Understand Spanish?
I understand.
Ok, perfecto. Muy bien, pues nada, bienvenido.
So welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. It's a privilege and an honor. And yesterday we met 200 young people making proposals for this Green Deal. So we picked 3 key ideas that resulted from the work groups. Here we have a summary of all these ideas. So they came up with 3 ideas we thought could have a greater impact, and in a few minutes we're going to present these 3 ideas. And we know that the Green Deal was approved yesterday, and I'd like to and signed, and I'd like to know a little bit. Would like to know a little bit more about this Green Deal.
This way? This way. But the guys are sitting there. Okay. I'll try and do everything. Okay, I'm very excited to be able to present to you very briefly the Green New Deal for Europe. But I have to say one thing before I do that. If we did not have your movement being active over the last 2 years, today I'm sure I would not be able to present a Green New Deal. Thank you so much for all your support. And it is my biggest wish that you would see the Green Deal as your deal. It is my biggest wish that you are part of translating what is a roadmap into concrete measures for the next generation. The Green Deal can help us achieve this very important goal, which is to be climate neutral as a continent by 2050. We need to do this because if we don't engage on this road, the rise of the temperature is going to be way beyond 1.5 degrees, and then the situation is quite literally out of control. We then, as human beings, can no longer control events. And that, my friends, is a scary thought. Already now, we see what erratic weather is doing. Already now, we see that Mother Earth can no longer support the way we behave. We're in a country that has experienced this very directly with the gota fria that has caused deaths, that has caused huge devastation, which is an erratic weather form, huge storms that used to happen in Spain perhaps once every 50 years. And now Spain has to be prepared to have a gota fria perhaps once or even more often every year. So we need to make sure we take control of our destiny by implementing the Green Deal. And I want to emphasize that it's a roadmap. It's not a precise prescription, but that roadmap includes proposals for all areas that are affected, which is in fact all of society. It has proposals on agriculture, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a bit more in a moment. It has proposals on our mobility, on our energy sector. It has proposals on how we build, has proposals to do a lot on reforestation to make our continent and our cities greener again. And it has proposals to reset our industrial setup so that our economy is a sustainable economy with sustainable jobs for everyone. Let me end on one note which I want to share with you. If we want this to succeed, we can leave no one behind. because the people who are most vulnerable in climate change are also the people who very often feel that they are most vulnerable in the Green Deal, in the sense that the transition we are asking from them is something they fear they can't make. They can't afford to do that. They don't know where to go. So, paradoxically, if we are not careful, the people who are most vulnerable through climate change might be the people who will stop us take the measures we need to address climate change. For this not to happen, we need to make sure that this transformation is also done on a socially sound basis, that we protect the weakest in our society and we take along those who have so much to lose so that they become winners in this new society. You guys are going to decide whether this is going to happen or not. You guys have made us do this until now, and you guys will decide whether we will be successful in implementing all that we need to do. Thanks.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Yesterday we were developing many ideas and proposals because there are many proposals we won't be able to present today. So I'd like to ask those of you who've taken photographs to please share them in social media. There are hashtags, etc. So please make sure you load them so that we can share them. And now I would like to welcome those three people that have been voted by everybody. So I'm going to ask you to please come up.
¿Tenemos otro micrófono?
I guess we have another microphone, or else we'll use Mr. Timmermans' microphone. First of all, I'd like to hand the floor over to Rodrigo Lopez again, and from the Biosphere Reserves from UNESCO in Spain. And he's going to present his idea in about 3 minutes in order to elaborate on yesterday's experience and about the development of their proposal. First of all, Mr. Timmermans, I'd like to thank you for allowing us, the young, to participate in governance decisions and in decisions made on the level of the European Union. We believe that protecting biodiversity will help us fight climate change, and we believe that we must be able to live in our own territories, and this is what our proposal has to do with. A sustainable food plan. We work in a network, and I'm going to tell you about a successful challenge in the north that we're trying to share with 700 reserves that are places for experimental activities in this area. First of all, because we want to fight climate change. High percentage of greenhouse effects emissions come from our activities. Many European citizens don't have access to decent food, and foods, when they cover large distances, are collected before they are ripe. And I believe that it is extremely important to be able to collect them locally instead of resorting to chemicals that pollute them. So our food is going to taste better with more nutrients. And also goal 11, responsible production and consumption. When we consume locally and our money stays inside the European Union, it doesn't leak out, and it stays in our own villages, in our towns. The better our neighbors do, the more we strengthen our productive systems, and also life or land ecosystems. In my territory, we see that people abandon villages because when we no longer farm, we see invading species, and people start planting trees like eucalyptus, they produce terrible problems in the soil. And we have to turn the situation around. And this is what we want to do. This is what our proposal is about, to incentivize consumption locally, to incentivize local shops. We thought about creating a label for these products that somehow justify and that prove that they come from local productions. Thank you very much. And now we're going to listen to everybody, and perhaps you may also have a question for the rest. I'd like to invite Ana Maria over in order to share their proposal, and I'd like to please ask you to slow down. And Ana come from Universidad de Alcalá. Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting us and for giving us the opportunity to share our ideas and proposals. So I'd like to say that we could change the focus on environmental education, because it is true that much of what we need to do is focused on children in schools, but this is a problem that can be shared by older people, with adults, because they are the ones who act. So people who can do something on the level of companies. Well, I believe that training is essential, not only this scientific and reliable education that professionals may teach and disseminate. So it's a lifelong education at any age, and on the level of schools, non-formal education, and even companies, because if we start making people aware of what is happening, that will be a huge step, because if we do so, the rest of the actions will follow, because if we know what is happening, we'll know what to do. But of course, we lack education, so I propose to improve what we do in education, and whatever we are not doing well must be amended and therefore improve. Thank you very much.
Y ahora tenemos Víctor.
And now we have Victor Cortés Ortega, who studies experimental science at Rey Juan Carlos University of Madrid. Good morning, and thank you very much for allowing us to be here with you, because this may be a bridge between these two domains that operate separately. My proposal has to do with increasing our investment in R&D, because science, if we are not capable of improving from a technological and scientific standpoint, we won't be able to implement our proposals. And this is why we collected a series of proposals we believe to be key, among which is the following. Until technology can solve the problem of renewables, we could use nuclear energy, but as a basis, but using waste in order to avoid this problem. And from the point of view of fuels, we propose to encourage the use of biofuels like kerosene or other fuels used in aviation. And the idea is to reduce their emissions, but those emissions that we are going to keep on producing, we need to get rid of them. In order to do this, we need to be able to capture and store CO2 in order to avoid greenhouse effect emissions. and many groups have spoken about this, but I'd like to speak about pollution. It's not just the atmosphere or cities that are polluted, but also rivers and soil. And we need to start doing research on soil remediation, but we need to restructure our territories, our land, the same So therefore, my proposal, and the one we've discussed, is that of creating a European scientific platform that will bring together all research institutions, universities, and other scientific centers that will bring us together in order to be able to communicate and share ideas and to have a better project funding. And to this end, we need to increase our investments in R&D but not just on a European level, but also on a world level. And this is something that can be created through European legislation. People always speak about the lack of funds for research projects, and without these funds we cannot make progress. And I'd like to end by saying that science is the mother of progress. Science has globalized us. It's brought us together, and it will also bring us out of these problems, because without science, Homo wouldn't be sapiens.
Gracias. Y bueno, podría simplemente ver aquí en el...
Well, let's see show of hands who was in the workshop yesterday. The people who developed these proposals. Look at them. They developed all these ideas together. Maybe you have a question for them, perhaps, to see how yesterday went?
So, yes.
Okay, let me start with you. We talk a lot about emissions and about the climate crisis. Linked to this crisis, intimately linked to this crisis, is a biodiversity crisis. We are at the risk of losing 1 million species because of the way we live. And this is intimately linked with the climate crisis, and we need to find solutions. One of the solutions, a very important part of the solution, is in recreating agriculture, in making agriculture sustainable, in helping our farming community to rid itself of the necessity of so many pesticides, in creating opportunities for the farming community to increase biodiversity, to be part of reforestation in Europe, to find solutions which are based in the natural environment. And people, our citizens, we want healthy foods, healthier foods than we have today. And we have to find a program to redirect our agricultural policy in that direction. Today, everybody's unhappy. The farmers are unhappy because they get little money for their produce. Consumers are unhappy because the quality isn't good enough. And people are unhappy because it leads to natural degradation instead of improving our natural environment. So the Commission will present early next year a plan from farm to fork, where we will take all these elements into consideration to redirect our common agricultural policy and to give a better future for farmers who want to be sustainable. And I suggest that when we make these plans, we ask you to send your contribution to see if we can incorporate some of your ideas in the plans we have made. Okay? Then moving to the two subjects which are related. Your two subjects are related. Many of the solutions we can find do not need new science. Some of the solutions need a lot of new science. So we need to invest in scientific research more than we have done so far. But we also need to help the scientific community to translate what they have found into practical solutions in cooperation with industry, with society. That's what the role the Commission will see. We also need to create possibilities for investment so that startups, very often with young people of your age, who want to bring new products to the market, who want to incorporate this climate positive science into their business, get support, get loans, get subsidies so that they can start their companies and create jobs and incorporate science into that. But I want to make a more fundamental point quickly because it's very important, perhaps most important point. Why are you asking this? Because you were educated to know critical thinking. You looked at the facts and you said we can't go on like this, and you demanded of us politicians that we act. For this you need good education. If you don't have good education, you don't learn critical thinking. And then populists and charlatans can sell you anything. You will believe anything. So we need to make sure that our educational system still delivers young people that are capable of critical thinking, and that young people who are capable of critical thinking come to the right conclusions about climate change and then use that knowledge to spread it in wider society. And we as Commission have to help you, provide you with the information, provide you with the means of communication so that your knowledge can be spread in wider society. And this brings me to my final point. I am talking today to your generation, but the part of your generation who is engaged in this. And I'm asking you to do one thing, please. Please, please keep talking to other members of your generation who do not feel part of this, who feel excluded, or who don't believe it yet, or are against it, who are sort of weaponized by people who want to use them in a political battle that will not help us solve this problem. So let's feel a collective responsibility to take everyone along and to leave no one behind, also in your generation. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you.
And once again, my offer stands. If you want to be part of the policy framing that we're good, policy formulation that we're going to do, I invite the three of you to be part of that. And through you, let me say one thing. We are going to create a climate pact, and your generation has to have a role in that climate pact. You have to be heard. Your ideas have to be brought along. And I will promise to you that you will be heard and that you will be part of the climate pact.
Muchas gracias. Ahora en un momento vamos a tener la posibilidad para tomar preguntas de todos vosotros. Antes de eso,
Okay, in a minute we'll have
¿cómo ha sido para vosotros la experiencia de ayer? ¿Os sirve? ¿Pensáis que sirve ese tipo de espacios? ¿Cómo ha sido esa experiencia? Muy brevemente.
Yo creo que ha sido muy...
Well, I believe it was greatly enriching. It was an interesting experience to get together with another 200 people to debate these matters and relay them directly, face to face. I believe we should have more of this. And in some, my message is you need to trust the youths. And we may make mistakes. We're all entitled to making mistakes, but you need to listen to us, and that's why I'm so grateful that you decided to listen to us. And what was it like for you? Well, I agree with him. Yesterday was an awesome experience. Everyone had an idea or something to contribute. But just as we contributed ideas yesterday, there will be new ideas next year, because everything is in motion and ideas get updated, and I believe that it's very important for everyone to express their ideas and their opinions in the interest of the greater good.
mis compañeros, pero sí que agradezco mucho.
I honestly don't know what to say. I'm grateful that we're finally being heard. But not just here. I believe we need to be heard in the academic world, because there's plenty of knowledge out there, and young people have plenty of ideas and plans for the future, but they don't know how to get there, how to turn them into action. So we need to make our voices heard in other areas. Trust me, it's worth it. Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So I would like to ask everyone for a big round of applause for these three youths and to all of you for all the good work. Thank you once more. Well, the floor is open for questions or comments. Good morning. My name is Andrea. Okay, I'm standing up. My name is Andrea, and I have a request for you and for the entire EC in charge of this new Green Deal. Europe cannot continue to say that our emissions have been reduced. Europe cannot continue to say that its emissions have been reduced as while they continue to do business with industries and countries that are serious pollutants of the environment. We need to be transparent. We need to tell the truth. Growth and pollution in Europe are linked, and we need real indicators of this connection in this Green Deal. We cannot continue to import goods from polluting industries. I believe that's the only way we can actually drive or motivate other countries that have not joined the Paris Convention to join our efforts. That's the driver we need to motivate or force non-compliant nations into this deal. Because we're all on this ship together. It's not just Europe.
Important point, and let me answer directly. In the Green Deal, we've also changed our trade policy. We have said that if Europe negotiates trade deals with other parts of the world, the principles of achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement are an integral part. If the trade partner doesn't subscribe to that, there will be no trade deal. So that is how we are trying to help our trade partners also to go in the same direction. On top of that, I believe European consumers should be aware of the products they put on their plates or they buy in the shops. And many of the agricultural products we import are obtained through deforestation of primal forests. And I want European consumers to be aware so that at the end of the day, when you go to a shop and you buy a product, that you know that you're not contributing to deforestation, to the disappearance of the Amazonas or deforestation in other parts of the world. So also in that, we will have to make steps forward. At the end of the day, trade has to be fair, because you are so right. We can do whatever we like in Europe. If we don't help other parts of the world walk the same walk, then we will not going to achieve what we want. Because at the end of the day, Europe is only 9% of emissions. Our efforts will only help if we can convince others to do the same. That is an essential element of the Green Deal.
Gracias. ¿Quién más tenía una pregunta? Sí.
Did we have any other questions? You, for instance? Yes, hello, thanks for coming. My name is Miguel, and I'm a forest engineer. You spoke of reforestation and deforestation. My concern is that politicians and many celebrities have their picture taken when they do reforestation, and then they forget about the extra 80 years it takes for those trees to grow. So I'm suggesting a shared forestry policy, just as we have a common agricultural policy. I suggest that we create a common policy to give money to all those forest owners that contribute to circular economy and who are of the essence to reforest our rural areas.
Through EU policy, common agriculture policy, structural policy, Portugal was incentivized over many years to plant eucalyptus plants very close together on huge areas. And one of the reasons of these tremendous, terrible forest fires in Portugal was exactly this. And if we want to have a massive program of reforestation in Europe, It has to be done on scientific grounds and with a long-term perspective. We have to listen to the people who know what they're doing and to put the right trees in the right place. You know that forests now in Spain and elsewhere are already suffering terribly because of the increase of temperature. So we need to offer forest relief by planting plants in those forests that can survive and thrive with higher temperatures. And we need to especially use your expertise to green our cities. You know that every year more than 400,000 Europeans die prematurely because of bad air quality, very often in cities. If we green the cities, we improve the air quality, we bring the temperature down, and we create carbon sink, apart from the fact that we create much nicer cities. So we need people with your expertise to help us make a huge program that we will plant in the coming years, at least 2 billion trees in Europe. This is what we need to do. But you are so right. We need to do it correctly, scientifically, and with the expertise of foresters such as yourself, and with a view to 80, 100 years, not just 1 or 2 years.
Gracias por la pregunta. ¿Quién más tenía preguntas? ¿Vamos por ahí?
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yes, hello? I propose that governments, both national and international, as well as European institutions, lead by example so that all the energy you work with should come from renewable, non-polluting sources. Beyond that, I believe you should also give European officials the possibility to move around in the least polluting possible form of transportation, hybrid at the least. And I also believe that public services provided both by states and European institutions should guarantee minimum pollution. That's it. Thank you.
It's what we are doing at home as a family, you know, looking at the car and this is not a good car, we need to get another car, looking at how we go places, whether we could use the bike a bit more than we already do, what sort of food we put on the table, what we buy. And so there's I think this is going on everywhere in the world, and especially in Europe, people rethinking these things. But we need to give the good example. You are absolutely right. And that is why we also announced yesterday that the Commission has the ambition of being carbon neutral, climate neutral by 2030. And we will start now, looking at our travel, looking at our paper use, looking at our buildings, looking at our catering, looking at all these things that have an influence on our carbon footprint. And we invite the other European institutions to do the same thing. We invite member states to do the same thing. And if we do all that, because of course you have to practice what you preach, but we have also to recognize, and I'm the first to recognize this, I'm way off the mark today. And I also will have to make a lot of efforts before I can say that my carbon footprint is acceptable. And I think this applies to many of us. But as an institution, we have made this commitment yesterday, and we hope to be able to convince other institutions and member states to do the same.
Muchas gracias. Vamos a ver, ¿hay más preguntas por el otro lado, por aquí?
Thank you. Can we go over to the other side? People are willing and eager to participate on this side as well. Hello, good morning. My question goes back to the very first question. We heard that with the new Green Deal, new trade agreements signed from here on after will have to be compliant with the Green Deal in terms of sustainability, climate change, etc. But what about old deals? What about old treaties? Are we sticking to that? Treaties like Mercosur, the Japan agreement, etc.?
We have to operate, obviously, is pacta sunt servanda. If you've reached an agreement, you honor that agreement. But you can also offer to renegotiate the agreement, to revisit the agreement. Now, you mentioned one, which is Mercosur. Mercosur already has possibilities to discuss issues such as sustainability, such as the management of natural resources, etc. And I also had a meeting with indigenous peoples from Brazil not so long ago, and I made the pledge to them that we will use every possibility in this agreement to also look after the plight of indigenous people and their natural environment. So we will make this a very important part of our discussion with Brazil and other countries parties to that treaty. So we can already use the possibilities in treaties better than we have done before, and we will do that.
Muchas gracias. ¿Quién más tenía preguntas?
Thank you. Any further questions around the stage?
Flowers, and I'd really like to ask you if you think it's possible, and if so, how, to decarbonize our economies and shift to renewable energy sources, which we all agree is necessary, while still maintaining and restoring biodiversity, because wind turbines, solar power, and biofuels require vast amounts of land.
I think it is absolutely possible, because the way we use the land today is so erratic and so badly planned that we waste a lot of land. Wind energy, I think, is going to be most successful offshore, so it will not take a lot of land. Solar panels, increasingly technology advances, we can start integrating solar panels in so many things. In the roof of cars, in windows, in the tiles on the roof of buildings, everywhere. So you would not need necessarily to use land that is necessary for our biodiversity. And by the way, you know, if we succeed in this program we have of reforestation of Europe, we contribute immensely to revitalizing our biodiversity. If we succeed in reducing pesticides, in taking endocrine disruptors out of the picture, in making sure that we have a more bio-based economy, we can certainly increase our biodiversity. But it will remain a huge challenge, and it will need real government action on all levels: municipal, regional, national, European, global. And it will not happen without you telling us to do it and keeping on our case, because otherwise people say it's too complicated. But I think we can do it. And the one thing I would propose, we need to prepare for the big biodiversity conference that will be held in China next year. And I hope you will be part of that preparation and keep us on edge and tell us what to do so that we do the right things there next year.
Muchas gracias. ¿Había otra pregunta por ahí?
Thank you. Did I see some other hand raised up over there?
Limburger, I have a question about the educational aspect of climate change. Over the past decades, education around any topic has changed through the internet. There's a lot of free content, high quality content in video form, text form about many things that I think is often better than the way schools present it. Is there any plan to provide climate change education in these new formats rather than just adding books to what students learn in school? Are there any innovative approaches to education in this regard? Thank you.
Well, I think we need to use your expertise and your generation. The way we communicate is already better than in the past, but it's still very much old school, you're right. By the way, I'm very proud of the communication we prepared on the Green Deal, but indeed it's again on leaflets, and you can watch it online, you can go to the website, etc. It's all there. But what we need to do, if you look at, let's look at what people do who have a disruptive influence on society with their YouTube channels and the vlogs and all of that. And let's use that, because that is a way. I see that my two youngest kids are 15 and 13. They get informed through YouTube in an incredible way. And then they come to me and, Dad, is this true, etc. Sadly, it's often not true, so we have a big discussion, which is good. But I agree with you, we need to put this material out there in forms that can be shared by young people in a way that is natural and not just because teacher tells you to. So I fully agree, we need to learn, teach us, and we'll do it. Yes?
Gracias. ¿Hay otra? Sí.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for fighting so hard for this, because this is one of the few sparks of hope at what has been dubbed the least ambitious COP so far. I have some questions in regards to the transportation sector. Regarding the aviation industry, there is no mention about, for instance, VAT on kerosene, or VAT on flight tickets, or tax on kerosene, and the ETS credits that are given out for free. It only mentions a reduction. How are you going to ensure that the aviation industry will pay their fair share in fighting climate change?
They're not paying their fair share now, and they should. And that is, we have a number of measures we can take. First of all, free emissions. We need to look at that and tighten that considerably. Secondly, the ETS system needs to be reinforced, I think, also beyond what IATA is proposing, and we need to have a discussion about that. Thirdly, and this is something I've been saying for more than a year in the electoral campaign leading up to the European elections and since, and I will not abandon that point. When you fill your car with petrol, you pay tax, quite a lot of tax actually. When you take the train company has to pay tax on the electricity or diesel that drives the train. When you take an airplane, they don't pay tax on the kerosene. That is not right. We need to fix that. So I believe that there needs to be a tax on kerosene. I've been telling airlines that. But we need to make sure that we don't create an we need to create a level playing field, which means we need to do this internationally. We can start as Europe, it's a big market, and then we need to convince others to do the same. And the revenue of this kerosene tax should be directed, at least in part, directly at climate measures, directly, so that we can see that the money that comes in goes directly to preparing us for a climate neutral future in 2050.
Gracias. ¿Tenemos otra pregunta por ahí también?
Thank you. We seem to have another question over there.
For the opportunity, I feel very grateful for this. My name is Alberto González. I studied automotive engineering, and I'm here to raise my voice for a more sustainable and efficient way to use energy of transportation.
Yes.
And precisely in electric mobility and hydrogen power. Right now, the biggest net and the biggest company that makes superchargers is private, and the hydrogen way to recharge the cars with hydrogen is almost non-existent. So I want to ask Europe to be the leaders on hydrogen hydrogen stations and electricity stations, and that's a thing that I think we only could do it by investing public European money and not relying on the private sector. So I ask if this is possible and how can we do it?
Yes. I could answer that question for the next 3 to 4 hours, but I won't. So I'll try and be very, very precise. First of all, we are going to build 1 million charging stations across the European Union, especially in places where the market doesn't do it, so in more remote places. You know, the distance between charging stations should be so acceptable that people have no worries about running out of electricity when they drive their cars. So we will be investing in that. Secondly, I strongly believe in hydrogen as an energy source for the future. I strongly believe in hydrogen-driven mobility. Yes, fuel cells in cars fueled by hydrogen is part of our mobility future. But I also strongly believe in hydrogen in another sense. Hydrogen could be the energy recipient of solar and wind energy and could then be transported over distance and used elsewhere. The one challenge we have with solar and wind energy is how to store it. Batteries are just a very limited solution, but hydrogen can be a great way of storing it. And we have a lot of existing infrastructure in Europe for gas, for natural gas, that could be relatively easily restructured to be a network for hydrogen. And we could also, for instance, have incredible agreements with countries in Africa where solar cells do not pose a threat to biodiversity if you put them in the desert. And those solar cells could create hydrogen, and this hydrogen could then again be the new energy source for Africa and other parts of the world. So yes, Europe needs to be the world leader in developing hydrogen as an energy for the future.
Gracias. Hay otra pregunta.
Thank you. One more question, perhaps. Please do speak into the microphone so that we can hear you. We're trying to go around the stage. Good day. My name is Laura Ruiz. I study industrial organization and environmental engineering. I'm going back to something that has been said before, how important the land is. Our land is the space we build on, we ride on, and we eat from. And we often forget that it's right beneath our feet. So I have a question for you. I'd like to know how much discussion there is in Europe about the quality of soil. Because it's not just the ground we're standing on. It's the land and the soil everywhere in Europe. So how deeply do you study, do you do land studies? Are there professionals working in Europe to protect our land and our soil?
Increasingly, we use all the expertise across the European Union and use academia and other expertise to give us advice on how to organize this. But I want to make a point to you about why we need to change. For decades, our agricultural policy was directed at one thing: feed Europeans as cheaply as possible with good quality foods in this order. And then, because energy was not an issue, transportation was not an issue, we didn't look at other issues enough. And now we have to come back, I believe, to other issues. Where do you produce in a natural way, in the most efficient way? How can you produce close to the consumer so that you don't need to transport foodstuffs over a long time, so you don't need to package them in plastics, so you don't use an enormous carbon footprint to bring things to the table. All these elements will have to be part of our agricultural policy of the future. And we will be asking member states, every single member state, make a plan for sustainable agriculture, for bio-based agriculture. Tell us how you can be ecologically sound with your agriculture. And then we will assess those plans, and on the basis of the assessment of those plans, we will see to what extent that member state can be part of the subsidies in the common agricultural policy.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. There's another question here. Hello, I'm a member of Extinction Rebellion, and we're asking for the creation of citizens' assemblies on a national and European level in order to make binding solutions as to how to solve the climate crisis. In the last 50 years, we've collected data on the serious situation of the climate crisis. We've had the possibility to fight it from a technological level, but this hasn't been done because of the lack of political willingness. So we need other tools that will be able to bring quicker change. And we believe that citizens' assemblies can be very efficacious in order to bring about this change. And I'd also like to say that 2050 is not enough. An Extinction Rebellion and other groups will keep on putting pressure in order for this process to speed up. Thank you very much.
And as an official of the Commission, and I thank you for that. as a professor in the past, when I talked to you guys, I was always criticizing. I said, you are the healthiest, strongest, best educated generation in European history. You have the best ideas. You are driven by idealism, not ideology, idealism. It's all very good. But you think it's enough to put your ideas on Facebook and then it will happen. It's not that how society works. So now, since 2 years, you have taught me that you can be different. Since 2 years, what I see is young people getting more and more organized, but you're not there yet. So take the success of the last 2 years and then think about the next level. The ideas you're putting on the table now could be part of the next level. What could also be part of the next level is that you look at existing structures and then take over those structures and then reform them in your image, or create alternative structures that can be attractive to the citizens. At the end of the day, the democracy, it will depend whether citizens will support you or not, whether they will trust you or not. And for that, you need to mobilize as many people as possible. For that, you need organization, you need communication skills, you need support. And anything I could do in advice or anything, or giving you a platform, when you think you need it, you can come to me and we will offer you a platform to propose that or to propagate that. But at the end of the day, it will depend on your organizational skills whether you get this done. Society is ready for it. It's ready for it. It's ready for it. If Time magazine, is ready to say that a 16-year-old girl is Person of the Year, then something is coming. You guys are coming. And make sure that you do what is necessary, that we take the right decisions so that we jointly can look forward to a climate neutral 2050.
Muchas gracias. Estamos un poco limitados de tiempo y hay mucha inteligencia colectiva.
We're running out of time, and there are many questions. Maybe we won't have time to take them all, but would like to ask you to share them all in Twitter or Facebook or with hashtags like EU dialogues, or else we won't have enough time. We will have one last question here.
Hello, my name is Thomas Heerschap, and I believe that people really want to make the right choices. We are all trying to work towards a better world. However, for consumers, it is so difficult to do what's right. When I walk into a supermarket, I don't know if one type of milk is better than another, or if I buy a car, I might know how much it emits, but I have no idea how much CO2 was used in producing it or shipping it around the world. And therefore, I want to ask, what is your opinion on producing a CO2 label so that consumers can be aware of everything they buy or every mode of transportation they use, that they know exactly if what they're doing is good for the environment?
Well, that's an incredibly good question. First of all, I think carbon footprint should be reflected not just on the label, but also on the price. So I think we collectively need to change our taxation systems so that products with a bigger carbon footprint are taxed heavier than products with a smaller carbon footprint. So then you already influence the behavior of consumers, but especially also of industry, because they will try and produce with at least the smallest possible carbon footprint. On top of that, I think labeling is very important. The European Union years ago already introduced energy labeling, you know that, to demonstrate the energy efficiency of products. In the beginning, people were skeptical, saying, oh, it's too complicated, I don't understand. Now it is commonplace, people are used to it. So we'll have to introduce that sort of labeling also in other areas, not just in terms of the carbon footprint of industrial products or consumer goods, especially also of what we eat, of the food we eat, of agricultural products. And I know that many parts of, for instance, retail know that they need to do this. Retail is ready to work with us to do this. We need better informed consumers. And it's not just that. It's also when people want to change the energy of their houses because they know that their house isn't isolated. They would like to isolate it. They would like to have solar panels, but they can't afford it. So we need to make it affordable. We need to make sure that they can sign a contract with a small and medium-sized enterprise that would put solar panels or a heat pump in, isolate the house, put other window panes in, and then the energy bill will not change. You say, that company would say to the citizen, you will pay the same amount you've been paying until now to me, and over 5-6 years you will have paid off everything, and then it's yours and you pay only the maintenance costs and nothing else. This is how you get citizens to embrace the idea, because I run into many people who say, you're right, we need to do this, but it's too complicated. It's too scary. I don't know how. I don't know who to trust. And we need to build trust so that people embrace the future and are not afraid of it. And if I can end on this, because this is the last thing I can say. Guys, my biggest worry is not the climate deniers. They are, almost disappearing. Even Jeremy Clarkson no longer denies climate change. So, that's a very small group. My biggest worry are the people who think it's hopeless. The people who say, okay, climate is changing, it's going to be bad, but what can I do? What can I do? Let's live it out for a couple of years. And we need to prevent people becoming desperate or hopeless and show that we can do this, we can fix this. And let's show them that we will fix it with your help, and I'm sure we can get there. Thanks you very much. Thank you very much for the time with you. Thanks a lot.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thanks.
Muchas gracias. En voz de todo.
Thank you very much on behalf of all participants. Mr. Frans Timmermans would like to have a picture taken with all of you. I know it's going to be difficult, but luckily we have some wonderful professionals here. And the best way to do it is that we're going to ask Mr. Timmermans to step down. And the rest of you, please come close to him from behind in order to see how many people can fit in the photo. And let's go for it.
Necesitamos espacio aquí. Vamos a ponernos... Perdona. A ver, ¿cuántos más podemos?